Holzwege 1 was actually the first image that I did in the series, and this is made of 2 images, so they're 2 individual photographs that were both shot on a very foggy day, and I had come upon this scene by accident. I was actually driving, and literally it was just gorgeous fog, and I just stopped and got out of the car and just started shooting. And it's a bike path and a landscape of just trees and snow. And this one actually doesn't have nearly as much manipulation as some of the later ones. But I like the simplicity of this one and the ethereal quality. And as soon as I found that, I knew that was a quality that I wanted to go after in other images. In Holzwege number 3, this is actually a combination of 3 different photographs. One of them, the highway image, is taken at sunset, driving from Cleveland, Ohio, on Route 80 back to Toledo. And then the other 2 images are photographs of woods here in the Sylvania area, in the Toledo area. And in this one, I started experimenting with having the grass kind of coming up through the highway and having the trees coming through the clouds. But I do a lot of photographs on the road, and that's something that I do very consciously because we experience so much of the landscape on the road now that, that's become our life. And I also, in all of these, and actually if I go to number 4, you can see in Holzwege number 4 that they're not idealized landscapes. I'm including the communication towers and telephone wires and things like that, because these are about a contemporary experience of the landscape. They're metaphorical, and I want them to feel like they're part of our life experience. But at the same time, there are elements that can't possibly go together. They can't possibly be part of the same scene. In this particular image, there's kudzu, which is an invasive species, an invasive plant species, which does not exist in Toledo, but then half of the landscape is taken in Toledo on a bike trail that I actually rollerblade a lot on. So it's not necessarily obvious, but I know that there are disparate images that couldn't possibly be in the same place at the same time. Holzwege number 5 is certainly an example of 2 disparate images that couldn't possibly be in the same place at the same time. The water is actually Lake Erie, and the other landscape is out west in the desert. So those couldn't be more opposite. But I like the ethereal quality that I was able to get by combining those 2. And one of the things that, at least for me, driving can be a really meditative experience and kind of a blank canvas, and it really allows you to think and just kind of contemplate your life. And I feel like this image speaks to that experience, especially when you're driving out west and you just drive and it's just miles and miles of open road and nothingness. And you can really contemplate the landscape and get lost. Sometimes you kind of forget you're driving. Not a great thing, but in Holzwege number 7, the highway image was taken somewhere between here and the East Coast. I believe it was in Pennsylvania. And the mountain in the background is actually Gay Head, which is on Martha's Vineyard, a place that I go back to periodically. Holzwege number 8 is also utilizing similar imagery of, that's actually another one that I used, that Gay Head landscape in the background and the highway with lots of cars. I don't usually have this many cars in the images, and that was something that I play around with occasionally, seeing what happens when there are a lot of cars, because when we're driving, that's what you see, Right. And again, they're not meant to be idealized landscapes. They're meant to be contemporary landscapes. So I am including cars and whatever happens to be in real landscapes that you see when you're driving. In Holzwege number 10, I actually have included my shadow, which I don't usually include, although sometimes I'll include windshield wipers or part of the car. But these landscapes were all shot on foot. and it happened to be very strong light. It was very late in the day, and the images that make up this photograph are in Colorado, and so the very strong yellows and the really intense blue sky is not manipulated. That actually is what it looked like. Uh-huh. I was in Aspen, Colorado when I shot the source photos for this one, and the lighting was just striking. It was just absolutely stunning. Mm-hmm. In Holzwege 11, this was made up of 3 different photographs, and all 3 of these were shot in Colorado. They were also shot in the Aspen area. And for me, the landscapes, even though nobody is necessarily going to know this when they look at the images, for me, the places that I'm shooting represent places that are meaningful, personally meaningful to me. The images that I shot in Colorado for this project were actually made when my husband and I were in Aspen for a long weekend. He was recruited, and he was actually interviewing for a job, and we were out there. Basically, he was interviewing, and we were really evaluating whether or not we wanted to pick up and move to Colorado, whether this was even something we wanted. And that's something that we all do in life. We all reach these points where we have to say, okay, do I want to take that opportunity? Is this something I'm interested in? Do I want to apply for that job? If I get the job, do we want it? And what does that mean? What does that mean for a family to pick up and move, from Ohio to Colorado? And what might your life be like if you were to do that? And so some of the landscapes that I'm working with represent those junctures in life where you're really reevaluating where you are and where you want to be. And so the images that are shot in Aspen, for me, represent that possibility of change, that unknown. And then when I'm layering these landscapes together in Photoshop, you feel like you can see where you're going. You feel like you know where you are visually, and then all of a sudden, as you follow that path, you get in this lost space where you can't quite figure out what's going on, and then you get to another part of the image where it does make sense again. And again, that's meant to be a metaphor for the experiences that we have in life. Mm-hmm. Holzwege 13, in this image you can see actually the windshield wipers of the car, so I'm placing the viewer in that perspective of driving, looking through the windshield, seeing the road from the driver's perspective or from the passenger's perspective. And this was an image that combines photograph from Colorado and another landscape that was shot on the highway. And I liked in this one the way it looks like you're kind of driving into the clouds, and the water of the lake that I've photographed actually becomes part of the sky. And I like the way you just seem to be kind of going into the clouds, mm-hmm. kind of driving into the clouds in that one. Holzwege 16 is a composite that's made up of photographs that were shot in a prairie area in Ohio. And I like the surreal quality of the plants, the sort of swampiness of the landscape, and the plants kind of coming up through the boardwalk and kind of overtaking it. And yet, at the same time, all of the trees look like they're kind of dead, and there's something very bleak about the landscape in the background. Mm-hmm. Holzwege 17 is a combination of 2 very different places. One of the landscapes, the landscape that's the foreground on the left side, the tree in the foreground, and the ground on the left side of the image is shot in the Toledo area. And then the clouds and the water and the mountains are shot in Cinque Terre in Italy, actually on the west coast of Italy. And this was a little bit different. This image was a little bit different because I combined them in a different way than I have in a lot of the other ones. And there's less transparency in this one. And I'm always surprised when people look at it and say, where was that taken, thinking it's a single image? Because it's not, the perspectives are not physically, they don't line up. But a lot of times, because the blending of this image is so subtle, a lot of people don't realize that they're looking at 2 different images. Mm-hmm. That's always kind of fun when people discover sometimes late in the game that they're not looking at a real landscape, a landscape that was made with one image. This was done in Italy and Ohio. Holzwege 18 was also shot in Cinque Terre and a highway in Italy. And one of the things that I wanted to do is combine not only American landscapes, but bring in elements of other places, European landscapes as well. Because even though I'm American and my experience is American, our landscape and our experience of the landscape is not purely American. I mean, what is American? We all came from different places. And the Europeans, when they settled here in the United States, really changed the landscape of this country. And so I went to Italy and for two reasons. One is I wanted to have that European layer, but also I wanted to have the rolling hills and the different kinds of plants and the different kinds of landscapes that the Tuscany area in particular provided me. Holzwege 19 is a combination of a boardwalk that is here in Toledo in a prairie region, and then also the terraced farming is in Tuscany in Italy. And so this was a juxtaposition of both an American and Italian landscape. Holzwege 20 is another image that combines photographs shot in Italy as well as in Ohio. And this image is actually made up of 3 photographs, and I provided screenshots of this one. Mm-hmm. So you can actually see the separate images that make up the one composite, the photo montage. So this is 2 photographs that were made in rural Ohio. One that shows the soybeans and the agricultural aspect of the landscape here. And then a highway photograph that was shot in Italy. And the tunnel is actually part of that Italian landscape. There are no mountains here in Ohio, mm-hmm. So I have to travel to get my mountains. Holzwege 24 is also a photo montage that incorporates both Ohio landscapes and Italian landscapes. And in this image, I wanted to use the corn because that's such an important symbol of this area. I could drive 10 minutes from here and be in cornfields. So I definitely wanted to have something that really spoke to this area, that was very specific to this area. And then the bridge, this bridge just seems like such a quintessential old world bridge. And I thought there was something very romantic about that. And then in the background, that city kind of up at the top of the mountain just felt so fairy tale-like to me. And with the mist of the clouds, it just had a real kind of storybook quality. At least for me, it felt that way. And so that was why I combined those images together. Mm-hmm. In Holzwege 25, I'm combining a fall scene that was taken actually pretty close to where I live here in Ohio with a photograph that I shot in Tuscany. The wall, that stone wall, is in Italy. So it's actually a road, not a highway, but a road in Italy. And there's actually stone walls on either side. And then the fall leaves are all in Ohio, and the leaves on the ground that you're basically walking on are in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I'm also playing around with color palettes. This image obviously has a lot of very warm colors. There's a lot of yellows and oranges and browns, where other landscapes have a lot more blue and green. So I'm also playing around with the color palettes. Holzwege 26 is, this was an image that had some fun surprises for me. I shot it's made from 2 photographs, and they're both shot in the Hocking Hills area in central Ohio. And Hocking Hills is a place that I go usually about once a year. I go hiking down there, and it's this amazing place. You're in this rural area, and then all of a sudden you drop down into these almost like caverns that are, you feel like you're in the land of the lost. There's just these amazing stone formations, and there's trees growing over rocks. It almost has like a Harry Potter sort of feeling to it. It's a really wonderful place. And so this photograph was made in Hocking Hills, and all of the stone that you see kind of in the sky, and then these trees with the roots exposed growing over the rocks, that was all in Hocking Hills. And then the road was just outside of Hocking Hills. It was just a rural road, and you can see a little bit of the car in the foreground. But what was really fun about this image when I was making it is the rocks are gray, and but when I combined the rocks with the blue sky, it was a really intense blue sky. It ended up giving the effect almost of like ice, almost like a glacier. And that was something that I didn't anticipate. So that was one of those fun surprises that happened when I just said, oh, well, let's see what happens if I put these two images together. Holzwege number 27 was also made in Hocking Hills, and so you can see the rocks and the stone steps and the trees. They all come together. They are different landscapes, but they're blended together. Holzwege number 30 is an image that was made using a photograph that I shot in Colorado and a photograph that I shot in New Hampshire. And again, for me, the images in Colorado represent possible change and possible upheaval, and also possibly very exciting changes in your life. And then the New Hampshire landscape, for me, the river in New Hampshire is a place that I go with my family periodically. We have Thanksgiving with family in Loon, New Hampshire, and that's where the river was shot. And that represents stability and family and home. And so for me, there's that personal juxtaposition of what's very comfortable and very stable with what's unknown and not necessarily comfortable, going into that place where you just don't know. It's kind of exciting and scary at the same time. I like the way it looks as if the road is under the water. It's going through the river. And you can see the water on top, what seems to be on top of the road, but of course the road is just a dry road. That's just an illusion. Holzwege 31 is an image that I shot. That's actually my hand, so I am actually driving, but I stopped the car. So not actually driving. I did stop the car. I was on a road where nobody else was there, so I was able to come to a full stop. So this was done safely. So this is, from my perspective, very specifically, you see my hand on the steering wheel, and that's, when you're driving, that's what it looks like. You see your hand on the steering wheel and you see something out the windshield, but of course, this isn't what you would normally see when you're looking out your windshield. So the image of my hand on the steering wheel in the car is one photograph, and then this kind of bizarre landscape in the background is actually two different images. One is a snow scene here in Ohio, and the other one is in Hocking Hills, and this very bizarre landscape. And this is an example of an image that when I was hiking, I saw this staircase and these plants that just, these rocks and plants and everything that just looked like it was from another time and another place. And I thought, I have to use this somehow. And so when I was starting to make this image, I started with that. I started with that landscape that was made in Hocking Hills and said, okay, what can I combine with this? Because I really want to use this photograph, because this particular photograph is just so visually rich and striking. And then I played with a couple of different images. In Holzwege number 32, I actually used the same source photographs as Holzwege 31, but got a very different effect because I used predominantly the snow image and very little of the Hocking Hills image, where in Holzwege 31, I have much more of the Hocking Hills image coming through. So it's interesting if you compare the two, because they look totally different, the color's totally different, but they're actually made from the same two source photographs. And the fog in these images was natural. Whenever there's fog like this in the images, that's photographic. I'm not creating that on the computer. That's actually what I'm shooting. And there have been a number of times that I've seen early in the morning that it's really foggy, and I'll run out and start shooting. In fact, I shot these photographs right before class one morning, and it was just bitter cold. It was the coldest day. I couldn't feel my fingers. I couldn't feel my toes, but fog was just so gorgeous I had to shoot it.
That's nice.
Holzwege number 3 is actually another photograph that I shot early one day when it was very cold and foggy. Part of the image is shot in Slovenia at a park that's very close to my house that I go to all the time, and that I've taken my daughter to ever since she was a baby. So that's a place that represents stability and is very comfortable and meaningful to me personally. And then the other photograph, which is the river, was actually shot in Loon, New Hampshire, which is another place that's, again, has connotations of stability and comfort for me because it's a place that I go with my family. And I like the way the two images come together, and it's hard to tell which is the path, which is the river, which landscape you're looking at. In this one, I use a lot more transparency, so sometimes the images are more transparent than others. But this is one where there's a lot of transparency, and you're really seeing a lot of both images at the same time. Mm-hmm. Holzwege 36 is a combination of a photograph that was shot in New Hampshire and also in Toledo. And so the prairie scene, this kind of dry grass and the trees, is shot here in Toledo in, I think it was late, probably really early spring, just kind of after the winter. And then the highway itself, this winding highway, was shot in New Hampshire, just driving through the mountains of New Hampshire. And I liked in this image the way this grass seems to come up through the road, but also the way the road winds and the edges of the road just barely kind of go in between these trees. It just felt like it just fit, just right. Mm-hmm. So that was another thing that I played with, and it was a happy accident. And when I saw the way the road literally seemed to curve right between the trees like that, I thought, oh, I have to work with this.
Yeah, it appears like a natural fit.
Right. And believe me, there are a lot of images that don't fits. There's a lot of trial and error involved in these to find the ones that just seem to go together. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll put 2 images or 3 images together, and I think that they're going to work really well together, and they don't, and you just don't know until you try it. Mm-hmm. Holzwege number 37 uses photographs that were made in Ohio and Colorado. So the trees where there's color are shot in Colorado, the mountains are in Colorado, and then that boardwalk and the dry grass and the shadow from the tree, that's all here in the Toledo area. Mm-hmm. And I was really struck by the quality of light in both of these photographs, even though they're in totally different places. And as a photographer, that's something that I always respond to. When I see beautiful light, I respond to that. And so I wanted to find a way to put these 2 images together because I thought the light was so beautiful.
Yeah, it's very nice.